Right. So without further ado, thank you all for joining in. And you can see this is a copy of my book, the Kindle version, Winning B2B Sale in China. And before I officially start, I just want to find out. I mean, you can unmute yourself or you want to type words into the chat box, it's okay. If you have been selling in China, what do you think fascinates you most about selling in China? Anyone?
Yeah. Okay. I think there may be some that might be muted.
Yannick?
If that's the case, just unmute yourself, please.
I just realized I'm actually linked with connected with Yannick on the WeChat, and since Yannick mentioned about the frustrations about selling in China, he's now gone into consulting instead. So Yannick, you want to share something?
Yes, I will try. Selling in China, to me, when I arrived over here, was a great adventure in the sense that, everything was for everything was open to different interpretations. The biggest frustration, I would say, on this fascination is you come here with a lot of enthusiasm in the market, but there's a rather big gap again with my previous company, American View,
Wow.
and the market reality. Whether it's about the product, we didn't have the full information in Chinese, for example. The timing that I explained to you,
Wow.
training, how to train and how long it would take. I like all this part, to go baby step in the market. I find it interesting to link with people. I was actually equally frustrated with the negotiation parts, where it's really a game over here, or that's the feeling. And on the other side, the impatience from the headquarter, not understanding what the market was about.
Right. Well, that's interesting, right? Anybody else with some fascinating stories or war stories to tell?
I think CJ, I really agree with Yannick there. I mean, I've been here a long time, as you know, and it was always, you're on the ground and then you're here for a while, you speak the language, you understand how it works, and you still have headquarters, and not just back in the UK or somewhere else, even in other parts of Asia,
right,
where they just don't understand how things work. And you can't always go in and get that sale straight away. You've got to build trust. Trust is implicit.
Exactly.
We're in a really high context society here where trust is so important. And without trust, doesn't matter which company you are, you still have to, as the individual on the ground, you have to build that trust. Lots and lots of stories, which would be a completely different presentation, I think. But yeah, lots and lots of stories. But I really agree with Yannick.
Right. Great, thank you. And without further ado, I mean, we can go all day about China selling stories or war stories. Without further ado, I'll just go into the book itself, some of the key chapters that I have, things like the evolution of relationship selling in China, which I'll talk a fair bit, as well as some of the myths and truths about building relationships. And the original title of the book was supposed to be called Relationship Selling in China. And the reason for that is a lot of sales training out there tend to focus on the consultative part of selling, and they forgot about the relationship part. We're not saying the consultative part is not important, it is. It's just that in this part of the world, whether it's China, other parts of Asia, relationship building is also very important. So there's a larger emphasis on relationship. And on the other hand, a lot of salespeople got the relationship part wrong, and we'll address that. We'll tell stories about that in a while. So we have a lot on relationship selling over here. We'll also say things like how to sell to customers when they don't have an obvious need, managing relationships with key stakeholders, pricing, against internal stakeholders as well, and motivating your team. So for today, because of time constraints, we'll just go into the chapters 1, 2, and 4 in short. Right. So, without further ado, we talk about relationship. Now, when we talk about relationship, generally, we'll think about guanxi, right? That's usually the Chinese translation. But on the other hand, besides guanxi, you have the other word, the other phrase, which is actually jiaoqing. And jiaoqing is actually, well, if you translate to English, it's still relationship. It's just deeper relationship. And there are different um, models of relationships, and it also morphed, it also changed over the years. So we talk about the evolution. Before I go there, there is some people left the chat. There is the speed of decision making. So I don't know if Harry Harold, do you mean it's fast or slow? I think usually it's fast relationship.
Yeah,
fast,
yes, I meant fast. Sorry, I did that. Yeah, it's fast decision making. Yeah, so very organized, fast, especially the successful bigger companies.
Right. And Max is saying that the biggest issue here is that a lot of marketing sales tools, platform websites don't work in China. But then again, there are also some China-specific tools at times. So there is, if you're a foreign company and if you use a lot of international platforms, some of those may not work in China. So it frustrates people as well sometimes. If you're on Salesforce, Salesforce works in China. Right. So anyway, back on some of the evolution. Now, if you were to ask salespeople 20 years ago, so it's now 2022. So if you're looking back at 2002 or year 2000, and if you ask people what is the single biggest criteria that you need to have in order to sell B2B, especially in order to have to sell industrial products, chances are the number one criteria then was how much baijiu you can drink, right? The ability to hold a liqueur. And if you fast forward to today, it's a different time frame. In the past, sometimes some salespeople of foreign companies 20 years ago or 15 years ago, they had it easy because sometimes the foreign brand is the only product available. And 15 years ago, the foreign brand is also likely to be much better in quality, much better in terms of performance than a local brand. So you pay a lot more, but you also get a lot more. And today, what's happening is that a lot of the local brands in China are catching up. So you have like maybe 80-90% of the quality of the functionality, but at 50 or 60% of the cost, of the price, right? And you also have the local brands delivering faster. You have a much shorter lead time. You also have a lot more flexibility from your local competitors. So the environment, for the sales environment for a lot of foreign companies in China is actually being squeezed a lot. In the past, foreign companies, especially some of the European companies, tend to think that no, guanxi is only relevant if you don't have a good product, because if you have a good product, it tends to sell itself. If you're professional in the way you sell, you tend to be able to win over customers. That part is getting more and more challenged. We now have to focus on the relationship part. Now, earlier on, I did mention that although many Chinese salespeople tend to emphasize a lot on relationship, on guanxi, but they're getting it wrong. Because the Chinese version of guanxi is that you buy them drinks, you buy them food, it's wine, dining, and you give discounts. Right? It used to be wine, dining, and KTV, but since KTV has been cracked down a lot, so it's now wining, dining, and giving discounts. So if you build relationships by just wining, dining, and giving discounts, it is a relationship, but it's an abusive relationship. It's not really helping. Because what really the shift is going from the guanxi part into the jiaoqing part, into the deeper part. By deeper part, I mean by, do you know, can you get information from the customers, when is the next project? who are the key stakeholders involved? What are some of the issues that are top of their minds? When you introduce new ideas, new concepts, are they willing to listen to you? They may not agree with you, but at the very least, are they willing to listen to you? Right? When you need to meet someone important, key stakeholders, do you get introduced to see that someone important? Right. So these are some of the different metrics that we are actually looking at deeper relationships, much more than just wining, dining, and giving discounts. And a lot of times, a lot of Chinese salespeople tend to wine and dine with only two groups of people. One, the purchasing manager. Two, if you can get to the bosses, they get to the bosses and wine and dine with the bosses, and that's it. But in many larger companies, if it's selling to a larger company, usually you will also involve some technical people. You may involve some financial people. You may involve some production people or some commercial people. So there could be multiple stakeholders that you need to build a deeper relationship. Now, even if you're selling to smaller companies, now this is a typical family business, right? So if you work with Chinese family business, whether they're in China or outside of China, just typical family business, the boss is the boss, right? So who do you think is the finance of a family business? Anyone? Yes, Wally.
Okay, I think is owner's wife.
Yes, exactly. So the 老板 is the boss, and the 老板娘 is the finance, right? So that's that. Who do you then think is the purchasing manager? Any guesses? Yes, Wally.
A part of the family, maybe a niece or a son.
Could be a niece or a son. The highest percentage usually, I mean, this is non-scientific, but on gut feel and experience, it's usually the boss's wife's brother, right? The brother-in-law, right? So it's part of the wife's family. So usually
Part of the
it's
family.
that way. Yes, part of family, the wife's family, right? So you usually that is the case, and even if you're selling, and what I'm trying to say is, even when you're selling to a family business, family owned, the boss is his boss, the relationship inside can be complex, right? The wife may think differently from the boss. The brother-in-law may have his own personal interests in that company. So it can be complex, and that's where we are looking at how do you build that relationship. It's not as straightforward as it is. So as part of the next step, before we even go into the relationship, hang on, Max has something to say. Given the increasing crackdown on corruption and wealth in the private sector, tech, SMEs, entrepreneurs, foreign-owned, I will be extremely using quite in sales process, right? So yeah, I mean the thing is that I see the word guanxi as neutral. I don't see it as detrimental. I don't think even in the Chinese context it will go into anything non-compliant. Guanxi is guanxi, and usually people use guanxi all the time, and even in a non-sales context. Simple things like, just to address Max's concern, simple things like, if your child is sick, it's ill, hopefully it's not COVID-19, but it's normally ill. And as we know, the hospitals, the public hospitals in China are all packed every day, right? And
managing the different types of key accounts.
Managing
High
different.
requirements by dictator, bargainer,
I'll
friend,
come to that.
strategy.
I'll come to that later. Right. So let me finish the story about the Padang Guanxi first. All right. And if a child is sick and needs to go to hospital, the little part of a Guanxi that you can do is to, if you know someone then that someone is willing to help you, you can cut the queue and go there and see the doctor directly. That's Guanxi and it's happening. It's an accepted norm of life in general in China, right? Coming to different types of key accounts. So if you are looking at customers and large customers and you're thinking about, okay, so if Guanxi, if relationship is so deep and so complex, do I spend equal time with all customers, or do I make some kind of rule of thumb judgment on what kinds of customers do I want to spend more time, or how do I deal with them? So, in general, if you have key accounts, as in larger customers, they got better budgets, they buy larger volumes, they got more potential on the upside, and basically you would like to grow together with them. We tend to try to group them into 4 main groups. So on the left hand side is we can separate them into lower requirements or higher requirements. Do they want a lot from their sellers, or do they want less? So it's a level of requirements. Requirements can also be understood as low tech or high tech. Usually, the higher the tech, the higher the requirement, right? Usually. So it can be high tech, low tech, or high requirement, low requirement. And on the other axis is high trust or low trust. So do they trust you a lot? Do they like to listen to you? Or do they don't trust you that much and are really suspicious of you? So when a customer feels that they don't really have much of a requirement and they don't really trust you at all, usually they are the bargainer, because if they don't really have a lot to require and they don't really like you, they just focus on price and cost. So they bargain a lot, right? On the other hand, if you have customers who have high requirements, they demand a lot, they're very fussy about what they get, and they're very particular. And at the same time, they don't really trust you. You only listen to them, they don't listen to you. So that's what I call a dictator, right? So they buck orders at you. On the other hand, on the other spectrum, you have you could have customers who don't really need higher requirements, that they really like you and trust you a lot. So they are what we call friend. And last but not least, if you have customers who are who's got a lot of trust and they've got a lot of higher requirements, they could be strategic partner. Now, to cut a long story short, we are not saying that the strategic partner is the holy grail, it's the best type of customer. It is not. It depends on how much are they paying. There's no point in going into a strategic partnership if the volume is not there or the margins are not there. Is it worth your effort to build the strategic partner? Because I've heard stories where companies, selling companies have sent their technical people to work with a customer's R&D to develop a new product, only to find out later that the new product did not sell well in the customer's market, right, in 2 steps away. So you got to be very careful about who you want to go into a strategic partnership with. Is it worth your while? Now, on the other hand, dictator, now, someone who bucks orders at you, have high expectations and requirements, and doesn't really trust you. Some people will think that no, they're horrible customers because they are rude, they are abrasive. Some other people will think that they are great customers because if they got high expectations and they don't really trust people, and yet they're talking to you, chances are you are probably the only guys that can deliver to their expectations. So even though there could be a lot of pushback in terms of pricing, in terms of what they want, as long as you're able to satisfy the needs, you can actually haggle for a higher price, right? That's dictator. So it's a matter of knowing how to massage them at the right time, for the right purpose, and at the same time knowing when to push in, especially in terms of pricing. If you want to reach that higher level of expectations, maybe the price needs to be up a little bit, right? So that's with how you deal with dictator. With friends, what do you deal with friends? And this is a question I ask a lot with salespeople, and sometimes salespeople just say, "Oh yeah, you betray your friends," no, or you abuse your friends. So this is what salespeople say by saying that when it's the end of the month, the end of the quarter, the end of the year, and they miss their targets by this much, so they'll call their friends and say that, can you help me out? I miss my targets by just this much. Can you buy whatever you need to buy for next year, next quarter, next financial period, and so that I can meet my targets? That's what a lot of salespeople tend to do. Now, if you do it sometimes, occasionally, that's fine. If you keep on doing that to your friends, or the friend type of customers, they are going to be very upset, and they may no longer remain as friends for a very long time, right? So you may not want that. And last but not least, the bargainer. And a lot of people will think that if someone is so price sensitive, maybe they're not good customers, maybe. But as you can see, I've got a red line to divide the bargainer part. And the red line is that, although the bargainer is very cost conscious, the bargainer there are different types of bargainers. There are people who absolutely don't trust you and have got no needs. And there are people who, on the right hand side of that red line, could be having that little bit of trust and a little bit higher requirements. So with that little bit of trust and that little bit of higher requirements, instead of just focusing on price, they may be willing to be focusing on costs. And price and cost are two totally different concepts, because cost doesn't mean just price. Cost could be the cost of maintenance, the cost of productivity, the cost of safety, or whatever. It really depends on how do you want to convince that customer that, although our price may be a little bit higher, but if you were to do a cost breakdown, and if you are willing to trust me just enough to allow me to discuss with you some cost breakdown, actually we're helping you to save costs. Right? And some customers actually bite on that. So really we're looking at different accounts and different types of customers, and having an idea of which ones should we tweak our messages and build different relationships with them. Questions so far? No? Okay, I'll just continue. We'll have Q&A in a while. So and one of the key thing is this: we talk about relationships, and if you are looking at any relationship, whether it's buyer-seller relationship, parent-child relationship, husband and wife relationship, any kind of relationship, the basis of all that is trust. And if you were to look at trust, there's this, you can Google it, and Google for the trust equation. And what it means is, as a seller's point of view, if you want to build trust in order to build a relationship, the first thing you need to think about is, are you credible with the customer? Credible, there are two aspects. One is, do you know your stuff? Do you know what you're talking about? Are you able to give reliable advice to your customer? Credible can also be in a sense of integrity. Do you tell the truth? Right? So do you does the customer see you as someone credible? Plus, reliable, as in Chinese sense, it's called 靠谱. Do you live up to your word? When you promise to get things done, can you get things done? When customers need to get a sample, get a demo, arrange for a shorter lead time, etc., can you help the customer and get things done for them? So that's how reliable you are. When you promise your customers something, do you actually are you able to deliver your promise as what you said? Right? That's reliability. And the third part is intimacy. It's a matter of how often, how frequent do you talk to your customers. If one of the key things that the customers really hate are the kinds of salespeople who has a lot of intimacy. They're at a customer's place all the time until they got the sale. Right? They're with the customers every single day, every single minute. They're really nice to the customers. They're really attentive to the customers' needs, and then the customers buy from them. And then they got a contract, they got a signed contract, they got the check, the money's in the bank, and then they disappeared until the next year, and then they reappear to try to get the next order, the continuation of the order, the reordering, right? So that's what a lot of our customers really hate about some kinds of salespeople. So it's intimacy. It's how frequent do you communicate with them, and not just a certain part of a sale. Sometimes it could be throughout your relationship with that customer. Developed by self-interest, and this is a tough part for salespeople, because on the one hand, salespeople need to be concerned about what's your target, how are you going to achieve your target, how are you going to make the sale, and on the other hand, you have to be concerned about the customer's well-being. How are you going to solve customers' problems, deliver value to customers? So that's very customer-centric. So you need to have a balance of, you cannot go in and be a free consultant. You cannot go in and say, I'll help to solve customers' issues, whatever there are, even when there is absolutely no money to be made. You can't, because you are paid to make sales. On the other hand, you also cannot just go to the customer and say, no, I'm not sharing with you anything unless you promise me you're going to buy something, right? It's a delicate balance, and you need to be able to show just enough of care and concern with customers, and also keep an eye on, are you really achieving or trying to achieve your sales targets by communicating with that customer, right? So it's kind of a balance to try to achieve. Some of the common things that we face when it comes to pitching to new customers, because chances are your customers are going to be pitched by many other salespeople throughout the day. So you're probably caller number 16 or 17 to that customer, and the customer, after receiving so many calls on similar product, this is the common reply: we already have a similar product, no need. Right. Similar to this is that customers usually don't think they have a problem. They feel that, you know, this product may not be the best, but it's good enough. This supplier may not be great, but we kind of work. And as a result, they are not quite receptive to buying from new buyers, from new sellers. So sometimes, instead of saying that, oh, well, we can help you solve certain problems, which customers don't think they have a problem in the first place, or they may think they have a problem, but they are unlikely to admit they have a problem or challenge to some random stranger salesperson who just cold call on them, or whom they just know. So you may want to reframe and say that, you know, we're not saying that you have a problem, but would you be open to explore different alternatives that may give you a better result? So this is the way that we can talk to customers. And again, it links back to the self-interest part. You want to go in there with some level of self-interest, but at the same time, you want to go in there and say that maybe, just maybe, we just want to find some common interest with the customer, and we just want to keep a conversation open. We just want to explore if there could be alternatives, if that could lead to better outcomes for the customer. It could be yes, it could be no. We don't know. So let's have a chat and find out, right? So that's the kind of angle that we want to have with Chinese customers. Also, facing with a lot of demand from or pressure from Chinese customers, not just Chinese customers, but customers around the world. Usually, sometimes customers will give you this thing called a scope creep. You agree that this is the level of expectations, the level of quality, and then they add on, can I have one more function on this? And can I have one more function of that? And they still expect you to deliver at the same cost and the same time. And this is where you sometimes need to find a way to manage the customer's expectations. That, you know, if you were to add on to scope, you want us to do more things, deliver more stuff, some of the other parts have to give. And this is one diagram that I mentioned twice. This is the only diagram that I mentioned twice in the book. If you want to have more scope, something has to give. Either you are going to pay me more, or don't expect much in terms of quality, or if I'm not getting paid more, at least can I have more time so that I can add your additional stuff in the scope so that I can deliver to you whatever you want. So sometimes customers may not know, unless they're being told, they may not know what kinds of trouble, what kinds of resources the seller needs to put in order to deliver that additional thing they want to add. And a lot of times, salespeople tend to think that, okay, additional things, those belong to other colleagues. Can be engineering, can be production, can be customer service. But in many times, it is up to the salesperson to explain to the customer that by that additional scope, it requires a lot more resources. So unless we are going to increase the price or the timeline, we won't be able to deliver on time on the same cars with those additional things. Would you want to add more cost to it, or would you want to just forget about it, right? So it's to let the customer have a sense of prioritization as into what is more important, what is less, what exactly do you want. Do you want to maintain costs? Do you want to stick to a certain timeline, or do you want to have everything, right? So it's a little bit of pushback where coming back to relationship. If the relationship is strong enough, customers tend to want to think twice and be more receptive to your feedback if that is the case, right? Some other things about motivating your own people. And also customers as well. So if you want to say that you want to build a relationship with customers, it's not just one person, it's not just a boss, it's the whole sales team. And if you want to get your whole sales team to really want to build stronger relationship with customers, you got to think about how to motivate your sales team. And most of the time, we tend to think that if I pay them more, no, if they bring in more sales, I'll pay more commissions, I'll pay more bonuses, then everybody's happy. It's not always working that way, right? So because the commission part is what we call expected payoff, right? It's if I do X, can I get Y? That's expected payoff. The other thing is, salespeople need to know, can I succeed? If you ask me to do something, and I deem that I got 0% of succeeding at all, I will not even try it, which is why the symbol in the middle is times, it's multiplication. If I think I got 0% of $1 million, I wouldn't try it, right? Even though the payoff is really attractive, unless you're able to train them, you're able to give them the right tools. We talked about tools earlier on. Unless they are able to find out or you help them to map up a good sales strategy that will lead to their success. Otherwise, they're not even going to try, right? The other part is that sometimes salespeople, we find it very difficult to get salespeople to sell new products because, or even to new customers, because it requires a lot more effort from the salesperson. I mean, it's much easier to sell the same product to the same customers. Probably a phone call, an email, or WeChat, and customers will just buy. But if you want me to sell to a new product to a new customer, it may require me 10 times my effort. For what? For twice the payoff? No, I'm not going to do it. So it's also the amount of payoff, and sometimes as sales leaders, we got to think about, are there ways to help our salespeople or sales guys to reduce the amount of effort in order to sell that something. So these are some of the things to think about your team when you're grooming them to be able to sell to customers. One thing about salespeople, this is an international research and applies. I think that the figure may be even higher for China if it's done specifically for China or Asia. The sales business now the single largest factor in the customer's purchasing decision. So there's a survey asking a lot of B2B customers, what makes you choose to buy from your suppliers? So it could be product, it could be quality, it could be pricing, and 39% of the customers ticked salesperson. So if you come and think about it, if you're comparing with your competitors of the same level, prices may be different, but it's not a lot of difference. Quality, functionality, there could be some differences, but it's not going to be a lot. The one factor that is going to make the largest difference is likely to be the salesperson, because the salesperson is the one that coordinates things between the seller and the buyer and get things done. So if the buyers feel that they are getting good advice, impartial advice, attentive service, getting things done for them, they find that, no, if I were to buy from you, I have better peace of mind than if I were to buy from someone else. So that's where the salesperson comes into play, right? And having said that, comments, questions, what's the key takeaway? And before I'll come back to this slide in a while, but for here, I'll just like to do some advertising, if I may. Free stuff. We have a sales assessment tool. We also, from the tool, found that a lot of Chinese salespeople are not really that fantastic when it comes to developing new businesses and actually asking challenging questions, sometimes a bit risky questions, to find out customers' real thinking and real needs. So those are the weaknesses. They are stronger in terms of maintaining relationship, finding who's in charge of what, following through, and negotiating the deal. So those are the weaknesses and the strengths of Chinese salespeople, as based on the 100-ish reports that we have collected so far. So feel free to go for a test drive. And the PPT, yeah, if you scan it and type book, you will be getting a copy of the PPT. So and that's based on if you're only using WeChat. So if you want to do it. And that's that. And feel free for a comment. So I do have a comment. I'll link this slide on just for you to scan for a while, and I'll go into some of the comments section. Yield to everyone, which you'll recommend then adding a customer care key account manager. Yeah, I mean, usually just to yell on the types of salespeople, and not just China specific. The kind of salespeople is that usually people who are good in developing new businesses, the hunters type of salesperson, usually they are not really that good in maintaining customer relationship. And the reverse is also true, as in usually people who are good in maintaining key accounts and being good account managers, usually they're not really that keen on cold calling and knocking on doors and getting new customers. So it's a kind of different personalities in that, and it's also showing in from the reports that we get from the assessment tools, right? And from SK, from Wally, how can you then explain to the customer that he indeed has a problem that he cannot see? How you can make him listen to you? Well, the way we start is that we don't want to tell him that there is a problem. We just want to explore if things can be better. And when we say if you want to improve something, if things can be better, that is just a different way of reframing you have a problem. Now, when I say that, no, it seems like there are several things that can be improved and deliver a better result. Sounds great, right? If you flip on the flip side, what I'm also meaning is that things are not so great. You have a few problems here and there, right? So the kind of a face-saving kind of framing is to say that, hey, let's explore things and see if we can do things better and some improvements, and let's see what we can do. We don't want to go into the negative words at the beginning. We also don't want to be too deterministic and say, here's what we can do for you, and come in very strongly. We just want to say, let's explore, and if there are ways to make your business better, your life better, we can explore, and we can see if there's something that we really can do for you, right? So does it help for Wally? Yeah. W1 sales, they are not. Well, the thing is, it's if you are going in with a big sales on your forehead, you are going to force your customer to run away as much as they can away from you, right? And if you're going in and say that let's explore and let's talk about things, I'm not going to sell you anything. Of course, if there are certain things that you feel that is going to be of value to you, it's gonna make a difference for you, I'll be happy to sell it to you. But at the moment, let's just have a broader discussion, right? There will be customers who will say no, no matter what, and that's fine. I mean, sales is always a probability game. You probably will have 80%, 90% of the people will say no to you, no matter what. And your focus is to find who are those 10 to 20% that will are willing to explore things with you at least, and find them quickly and work with them as soon as you can. And sometimes it's better to get a rejection on WeChat, on a phone, on some remote platform that you don't have to travel like 2 hours to see them, get a no answer, and travel 2 hours back to your office, right? If they are going to say no, maybe a fast no is more time saving for you as a salesperson than a slow and painful one.